What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Side Hustle Experiment podcast. Today, we got our friend Joji Davenport on. He is the co-founder of BookMind. He is a six-figure bookseller. He does all online arbitrage for books. So a lot of people probably don't know you could do online arbitrage for books. So he's doing similar to kind of what I would do, but specifically with books. We're going to get all into how he's finding these books. His profit margins are pretty crazy. We were actually just talking about it, so we'll ask him about that and just the normal whatever else we get into. So thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. I'm really happy to be here. John, you're an awesome guy. Drew, I know I've just kind of met you here recently, but just from talking to you, I know we're going to be buds. So I'm excited, guys. Let's do it.
Cool.
Sweet.
So you guys, you want to give a little bit of a background of kind of what you do, because you have a very interesting background, because this guy is full-time. He has a software. He does OA books. He has a family. He does a little bit of everything. And then give that, and then kind of your profit margins, and then a little bit of explanation of what you kind of do, because I don't think a lot of people really understand.
I'll try to make it as short as possible. So my name is Joji Davenport. I have a YouTube channel where I teach people how to buy books on Amazon and then resell books on Amazon for a profit. I'm also right now a full-time chemistry teacher, although I will be leaving teaching at the end of this year. So basically the way my normal day looks like is I'll go teach, come home, I'll hang out with my family. I have an 18-month-old son, hang out with the wife, and then usually around 10:30 p.m. to about midnight or 1 a.m. That's when I'll buy books on Amazon and then resell them on Amazon for a profit. Last year I did $297,000 in revenue and made $100,000 in profit. So the margins are there. The average buy cost of each book was $17. And the average sales price was $68. So that's the sort of margins in terms of buying books and flipping them on Amazon. And I mean, like I said, I have a YouTube channel teaching people how to do it. So I'm sure we'll get into more of it, but that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, so I guess the traditional book stuff is you go to Goodwill and you take out your scanner and scan 5,000 books and try to find stuff. So what's did you start there and then you got into this, or like, how'd you find yourself doing it OA? Because honestly, I didn't even know that until I looked up your YouTube channel like earlier today. And I was like, well, I didn't know this thing existed. So
yeah, I actually never did thrifting. I on the college campus that I went to was able to learn about reselling textbooks. So I learned from Caleb Roth, Steve Rakin, that you could basically, buy books and sell them on Amazon. So anyways, when I was on college campuses, I realized that, hey, there's a lot of really expensive products, really expensive books here on campus that a lot of college students are literally just like handing away for free. Like some college students will like throw them in the dumpster, or they'll just like give them to you, or they'll sell them super cheap. So literally every day I would just hustle. Like I felt like I was going to college to buy books on college campus rather than actually going there for my education. But I was able to cash flow my bachelor's degree and also my master's degree and graduate not only without any debt, but also graduate with actually having a positive net worth. And that was just, buying books from students on campus and flipping them. And what's crazy is even the college bookstore would have like a clearance shelf of books that they would, just basically sell for pennies on the dollar. And that was back in 2017, 2018, where they also, Amazon would give you gift cards. They used to have this program where they would let you sort of trade in your textbooks for a gift card. So you could literally like take the books on the shelf from the college campus bookstore and then just sell them to Amazon for gift cards and make like $20-$30 a book. It's pretty crazy. You don't do that anymore, but that's how I got started, was just flipping textbooks. And then I eventually graduated from college, and so I wasn't directly there on the source at the source. And so that's when Caleb Roth came out with the software called eFlip. Not sure if you guys ever heard of eFlip. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of where that idea of like, oh, you could buy books on Amazon and resell them on Amazon came into play, and used eFlip for a little while, but then realized you could actually just use Keepa to source. And that's kind of what my YouTube channel is about up until creating BookMind, which is a better way to find books on Amazon and then resell them on Amazon.
Nice. Yeah, so is it all A to A what you're doing, or do you find them on like little websites like boutique book websites or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could, but no, just all Amazon to Amazon. Sometimes, I'll buy them on eBay just due to the fact that a lot of sellers will cross-list, and so, they might have the book on Amazon. It might be like a couple dollars cheaper on eBay. So I do a little bit of eBay to Amazon, but it's pretty much, the premise is just that there's over 95 million books on Amazon. How could there not be at least 5,000 or 10,000 of those books that are below their historical market value, right? It's like 95 million. That's a lot of books.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I haven't talked about this a lot, but now that I'm done with Amazon, I guess I will say this. A lot of my revenue in the past few years came from A to A, and there's lots of intricacies like within that I think people don't really know about. So are you doing more of like the buy and hold strategy, or are you trying to snipe stuff when it's a price dump, when it comes in?
Yeah, I mean, you can do both.
Yeah.
There's something called Keepa deals. I'm sure you're familiar with Keepa
Yep.
deals. Yeah, where you could literally set some very basic metrics to look for books that have dropped in price by, like, I don't know, 50% in use condition, and you'll see books that just for whatever reason they're always, if you looked at the black line on Keepa, which represents the lowest use price over time, let's say it's hanging right around 50 or $60 for the whole year, and then for whatever reason some seller comes in and lists at $20, and you see like the sharp dip on the Keepa graph. Like, that's where you could like snipe a deal. And so Keepa deals is probably the easiest way to get started. Yep. And I've got tons of videos on my channel showing you how to do that. But using Keepa Product Finder, which I'm sure you're both very familiar with, is a better way to find books that have kind of over the last 30 or 60 days have definitely dipped below their historical market value. And those are opportunities where you don't necessarily need to like snipe the offer. It's just kind of sitting there, and it's like, hey, here's a book that normally sells for 50 or $60 and it's like $12 right now. Why not, buy it and sell for 50 or 60 like it's done for the last decade?
Yeah, I think
Sweet.
you also make out a lot too when it comes to, as a former bulk seller, right? Like, you're in a book for 50 cents, right? So maybe it could get $60, but you already have it for a year. When you're sending in volume, you need to like clear out your inventory to like quickly get stuff going on. And get that going. And there's lots of inefficiencies. As you probably know, there's really not, maybe there is now, but there hasn't really been a really great repricer for books, from my experience using them, just because they're used. There's just a lot of big players who probably have their own software, and it's just really hard to like reprice them and kind of get them, especially because you're looking at like good, very good. There's all these different conditions. So yeah, I can see how you could easily get like lots of books, and there's like tons of big sellers. I would say probably a majority of like the bigger sellers on Amazon are probably booksellers. Like, if you look at that like top 20 list, I think like 10 or 12 of them are all booksellers or media.
Yeah, what's funny is Drew mentioned, did you ever thrift books, go to Goodwill? So I never really did that with the scanning books that way. But I mean, a lot of the books I buy are from Goodwill. They're just from Goodwill online. Like, because, it's funny, a lot of people, when they go to thrift stores, they're like, man, it's not like the good old days where you can walk in and, you can come out with 15, 20 bucks. And the reason is because thrift books and, Goodwill, they've gotten smarter. And so they just sell the books on Amazon. But the thing is, those books, again, going back to what John said, because the repricing softwares are not very optimal, and they're normally based on current live data rather than historical data. Books can easily tank in price. They can end up well below what they're actually worth. And so, yeah, those are books you can buy from Goodwill. Like, David and Vishal were just at the Miami Sellers Conference. Like, I buy books from them all the time. And there's these big bulk sellers. I'm like, hey, yeah, I was telling David, hey, thanks, man. You paid for, I said, I'll pay for a drink or something because, I buy books from you. I buy books from Vishal, right? It's hard when you're a bulk bookseller and you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of books to keep track of every single one. But that's what I'm really specializing in cherry picking. I'm looking for books that historically hold a lot of value, but just right now happen to be very low in price. And it is a very small percentage of books, but again, there's 95 million books on Amazon. Like, how could there not be at least 5,000 or 6,000 books right now that are below their historical market value?
Yeah,
I think that's
on
a
the
great
note of the historical market value. What I think people, if you're watching this, you don't do books, you don't plan on it. That's the same way it goes with OA too. Like, how much this stuff's actually worth. That's like one of the biggest tips I tell people is like, if you see something that's $17 and like that thing's actually worth like $50, like, if you go to the store, it's $50. Like, it's intrinsic value. $17 will never go wrong, because even if it tanks, like one day it's going to go back to that $50 price, which that's just like an A to A thing. But yeah. People really need to understand that, because that's like a huge key in like, is this a good buy or not?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too. We talked about that last episode. And also, like, I think that's sometimes the mindset you need to have when you are selling on Amazon. Like, you throw that number out, you're like, oh, 95 million. It's like, there has to be something in there. A lot of people are like, oh, there's nothing there. And they search like 5-10 minutes, or like, who knows, like once a week. And there's like, no, like, there's stuff out there. You just have to look. And as you get better at looking, it comes quicker. But yeah, when you always like, I always tell people too, they're like, oh, I can't find anything on Walmart. And like whether or not Walmart's the best place to shop, there's one item on the site. There's probably like who knows how many items listed on Walmart, but there's one on there that sells for
Yeah.
more on Amazon. You just have to find
Absolutely. There's more than one. There's a lot.
it.
You just got to put in the
For
work
sure.
and find them, right? And you get better over time. Like here, what you need to get good at is looking at Keepa snapshots. And it's actually not, I mean, the principle is very simple, right? Like you look at the lowest use price being very healthy, kind of staying at a higher price than what the current price is. And so if you see sales rank drops when this book is priced at $50 and then it's $15 or $18 today, then at least open the Keepa graph and expand the historical, Keepa graph to the last decade. I mean, you've got so much data at your disposal where you can go, okay, this book over the last decade has been at this current price of $18 5 times in the last decade. Otherwise, it's always been, 30, 40, or $50. So it's like going back to what Drew said, talking about intrinsic value. It's like things become undervalued. And so understanding when they're undervalued and when they're not is really important.
100%. So you don't have to give away like too much sauce here if it gets into that territory, but do you look for a specific kind of books, and then do you have like a criteria? And the only reason I ask is somebody came to me about law books, and he was saying like I buy them here, I wait like this many months, and they all go up in value. And I was like, well, that seems like awesome. It's just a lot of work, so I'll probably never do it. But I'm sure that's similar to the type of thing, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of different categories. The easiest one is just all year round books. They're books that don't really matter when you sell them because there's no season attached to them. And those are books that simply like, okay, they hold a really high value, let's say 50 or 60 bucks, and then they drop down to 12 or $15. And whether or not that drop is like literally 1 second ago, like it's an instant drop, or whether or not it's a repricing war between Goodwill and thrift books that takes a week, like they're both undervalued, right? So those are an opportunity to buy those year round books. But my business partner, other co-founder of BookMind, Victor Gallegos, he is the seasonal online book arbitrage king. So he does so well with high school books, but there's also winter books, there's Easter books, there's books about 9/11, about Abraham Lincoln, there's books about Easter, and literally everything that you can think of. Any like large event, there's books that pop during that season. So there's seasonal books that you can buy in off season and sell them now. So coming up here soon, high school books are going to start really selling well in May, and then getting into July, they're going to start popping off and do really well.
Interesting. Didn't he buy like a lot of one Christmas book? Was that him?
There's a couple Christmas books you could probably buy at least 10 copies of in used condition. Yeah. Okay. And we actually made we came out with a list of, so me and him, we made a Christmas list of like 250 Christmas books or winter books. So not just all Christmas books, but books that are also kind of like Christmas gifts to people. Like there's a number of books that, for example, there's like a book about golf that does really well during Christmas because I don't know, I'm assuming wives out there buy this book for their husbands or something, but there's books that you'll see these seasonal patterns in if you just look at the Keepa graph. And, all it is expanding, the last, 5 years or 10 years of a book and saying, hey, every year is like this. It's kind of like a roller coaster ride, and you always see the use price go up in a certain time of year. But yeah, I forget kind of where I was going with that point. But what was your question there again?
I kind of forgot too. It's something I don't know. Anyway, so Let's say me or Drew want to get started selling books. We know about OA because a lot of people watching this probably do OA or maybe are on the beginner level. How would you walk them through getting started doing books?
Okay, number one thing is you have to understand intrinsic value. So you have to be able to look at a Keepa graph and as quickly as possible determine if the book is at its market value, above its market value, or below its market value. And so the way that you do that is just repetition reading Keepa graphs. So I've got a number of videos on my YouTube channel that literally just say, watch this video. It's an hour-long video of just, analysis of a bunch of books, right? And through repetition, you'll get better understanding. Oh, this book's probably below its market value. This book's probably above its market value. And then from there, I would give you a couple of videos that show you how to use Keepa deals, how to use Keepa product finder, how to use Keepa alerts or the track product feature of Keepa as well. And those 3 things alone could get you to 6 figures a year. And then once you really master Keepa, then you'll really appreciate BookMind, which is a software that Victor and I made that uses historical data to find books that are undervalued, which no other book sourcing software has done very well. Most of the other book sourcing softwares just look at live data. They try to exploit the prime bump. And so that's kind of like going back to eFlip. That was a great introduction to online book arbitrage. But really the main model of eFlip and the other ones that are out there as well, is just to like search Amazon right now for books that have really low merchant offers relative to the buy box prime price. And so going back to what Drew said about intrinsic value, it's like if you look at a book that's always been worth $10 or like $7, like literally the last decade, but then right now the buy box is at $50, it's like, yeah, you might be able to sell it for 50 in the buy box because you won the buy box, but that's actually not what the book's worth. That's just like an inflated price due to the mechanics of the way FBA works. And so it's not really a reliable business model in comparison to actually taking a book that always sells for $50 and then buying it for $10. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you do the first way you were saying, it's kind of like gambling. It's like, I hope it sells for 50, but if not, you get stuck with it forever. But that leads to my next question. So how many, like, let's say you buy 10 different books at this, and obviously you're way more, like, probably better at this point, but like, how many duds do you have if you have 10? Because usually when I was doing 8A, I probably got like 40, 50% good, and then 20, 30% all right, and then whatever's left duds. I'd mess up on like 1 to 2 per 10 probably, but is your hit rate higher than that or what?
Yeah, I'd say probably about 75% of them are really good. And then there's about 10% of them that are probably around break even or lose a little bit of money. But it, like, once you understand how to figure out the intrinsic value of books, like the only really way that you're going to go wrong if there are unforeseen circumstances that occur on this book that you couldn't, like, had a crystal ball. Like let me give you an example of a book that, you know, I bought maybe 6 months ago. So here's a book that over the last 5 years, Amazon's been out of stock, never been on the listing. And when Amazon was on the listing, right, they're selling this book for like $30. When Amazon went off the listing, you know, it slowly crept up, and over the last 5 years, it's now selling for double, triple, sometimes quadruple the retail price, right? And so it's like, okay, well, all of a sudden, you know, this book becomes available. I buy it for $15. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sell this for $60. So then, hold on a second, Amazon just randomly 5 years later decides to come on the listing, and now they're pricing the book. Not only did they come on the listing, but now they're under what they used to be. Now instead of $30, they're at like $22. So that's a case where it's like, did I have a crystal ball and know that Amazon's going to come on the listing after 5 years and not be on the listing? Probably not. So yeah, I'd say about 10% of the books, I would say, either are just books that are kind of floating out there still. I have to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with these books? But the good news is that at the end of every year, if I look at the end of if I look at the numbers at the end of the year, I could say, even if all these books that I bought that haven't sold didn't sell, I'm still wildly profitable, which is the good news.
Yep. That's exactly what I read into too. It's like you'd see stuff 3 years not be on there, and then you're like, how do they find 1,000 units of this thing? Like, and they lowered the price. It's crazy that happens. I don't know how that. Maybe they just find them in the back of the warehouse, like just. But yeah, that's a weird part of 8A, and there's nothing you can do about it, literally, because you just don't know that back end Amazon data. But like you said, it rarely happens anyways.
Yeah, and people always ask me,
probably like, we bought this 5 years ago. Like, fire sale it, and there's like 5 pallets somewhere.
People always ask me, like, Joji, I'm not comfortable with the buys. Like, I'm, you know, like, how do I know this book is going to do well? And the truth is, like, there's never a 100% that you know that this product is going to sell for a profit. But every time you come across a book, you have a level of confidence. Like, from my experience, I'm like 98% sure. Like, if I ran the simulation 100 times, 98 out of 100 with this book, it's going to end up really well for me. But there's always going to be degrees of confidence, right? And there's always going to be degrees of risk as well. So you might come across some books and you're like, I'm 75% sure. You know, if I run the simulation 4 times, 3 out of 4 times it do well, maybe 1 out of 4 times it doesn't. And so, you know, there's really never like okay, I know 100% for sure. But the thing is, you don't also need every single book to sell well. You just need 75, 80% of them to perform well, and then you'll be profitable.
Yep. Interesting. So why have you not ventured outside of just the 8A books? Or is that just like you obviously just know a ton about it? I can just hear, it's funny because I never talk 8A with anybody, and I can hear the way you're like talking about stuff. I'm like, oh, this is like a refreshing, because every time I talk about 8A, people are like, I've never even done that before. I'm like, oh, okay, well, but you obviously have like a really in-depth like knowledge of it, especially with the intrinsic value and stuff. Yeah.
The first thing is I just really enjoy it. I love book flipping. The second reason is it's just easy. The products are just easy to sell. I mean, you look at the book, you open it. I mean, every book is the same in terms of the way you condition it, in terms of the way you list it. There's no like special prepping or special things needed for different products. Returns are really low. I mean, return rate overall is probably like 1.5%. And the reason for that is you might get 5 to 7% returns, but those books that get returned, I mean, you could literally just resell it again, because usually the reason why someone returned it is not because there's anything wrong with the book. It's usually they just didn't want the book, but the condition's still fine. It's not like Nike shoes that somebody tried on once and there's a little scuff mark on it and now you can't sell it brand new anymore, right? It's like, it's a book, right? People expect that it's going to have wear and tear. So really low return rate. And then focus, I think, is really important. Well, I guess I should say before that, margins are insane, right? When Victor Gallegos and I went to the Miami Sellers Conference and we were telling people we do books, most people discount us because they're like, oh yeah, they're like, oh yeah, books is a great way to get into Amazon. It's a great way to get started, but you should really try to get into OA. You should really try to get a wholesale. And we would ask people who are doing 1.5, 2 million in wholesale, like, what are your sort of margins? And they're making less money than I was selling $297,000 in revenue last year, making $100,000 profit. So the margins are really great. And then the last thing is, I think focus is really key. The good thing with books is that it's a simple subject. It's a book. And I read a book called from Mike Michalowicz called The Pumpkin Plan. I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of that book. But the idea is, if you think about all the people who win those giant pumpkin contests, they don't focus on anything else but growing the biggest pumpkin. And so anytime this pumpkin vine has other pumpkins on it, they remove it. Anytime, there's anything outside of this pumpkin, they just completely block it out of their mind. Their goal is like, to grow the biggest pumpkin, I really got to focus on just this one thing. I've got to look at what were the previous seeds that made the biggest pumpkin, what was the soil from the winter of the previous year, just like really honing in on one thing. And how can somebody beat you if you're just books? Like, if I'm a bookseller and someone else is trying to do online arbitrage and they're books and then they're toys and they're like, who's gonna win, me or them in the book category? It's gonna be me, because all my attention is focused on that, nothing else. And if it's not a book, I don't care. I'm going books all the way. And same thing, I met somebody who's a YouTube subscriber on my channel, and they were trying to pick between OA and books, and like, which one should I do? Traditional OA and books. I said, it doesn't really matter which one you do. You just got to go 100% on it. Because he's like, maybe I have VA, my first VA do OA, traditional OA, and then my other one do books. I'm like, look, Trevor, if you just sat down with both VAs and all three of you sat down in one run room every single day for like 8 hours a day and just were books, how would you guys not succeed? It's just like really being focused on your target and your end goal, I think, will move the needle further for most people.
Hey, John, didn't you hear that recently somewhere? Big seminar. Yeah. I just read an OA seminar, and I preached that like crazy, man. I'm like, you guys have got to stop getting like, I need to go here. Like, if you have to become obsessed with the thing, and when you become obsessed, no one's going to beat you with it. And it doesn't even matter what you do. Like, you can pick literally any lane, like books. People discount you, but it's like, okay, well, if you're really good at it, you're going to make more money than the guy doing like 7 different things.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting. The wholesale guys probably are like, oh, that's cute. And then you're like, yeah, your margins are cute.
And the nice ones are trying to persuade us like, no, it's okay. You can start out, like try to start buying some. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm in a solid lane. And then not only that market is wide open. There's like no one making content on YouTube except for a couple people. There's no one making any sort of softwares until BookMind that are actually, pretty decent, like pretty good. So there's just so much opportunity in that space. And I just really love this lane. Even if I get discounted, I'm fine. I mean, at the end of the day, what matters is not how much you sell, but how much profit you make. And not only how much profit you make, but how much money you actually keep at the end of the year. So we didn't talk about this in the beginning, but I'm also on the path to financial independence. So back in 2017, my wife and I had a goal to try to hit a $2 million net worth by 35 and retire, like never have to work again, right? And so right now I'm 29 years old. We hit 1.3 million together. And this is why I'm leaving teaching at the end of this year, because we're getting to the point where we're nearing financial independence. And the goal of financial independence is like not to sit on the couch and do nothing. It's just to do the things you enjoy. And I really love BookMind, the software that we just created. I really love flipping books on Amazon. I really love teaching people to that. So I'm leaving my job because, I don't need it anymore. Like, for example, because I haven't really needed my teaching income for the last, year and a half. And up until, so this is what, the third month, or this is now the fourth month. So technically I've made 1 penny in the last 3 months for my job because I've just been maxing out my 457 and my 403B. So like every month I get a paycheck from my school and they send me an actual check in the mail that costs them like 26 cents. It says on the stamp, and then the amount that they pay me is $0. And then I think in January they pay me 1 penny. So it's just funny that I love like, okay, here's a check they paid 26 cents for to send me like 0 cents or a penny. So anyways.
How did you come to the number of 2 mil? Because I always thought like what I wanted to get to was like 3 to 5. Because I just the numbers on the 10% S&P or whatever. But why is 2 mil your kind of number there?
Yeah, so basically the way the financial independence movement works is if you take your annual expenses and multiply by 25, you'd get to a number at a 4% withdrawal rate, where technically, according to this Trinity study, you would never run out of money if you were, just kind of pulling 4% of your portfolio. And obviously it takes into account that you pull 4% every year, regardless of like the market's up or down, or if you have other sort of income and stuff like that. But the idea is that, my wife and I live very frugally. And so if you look at that 4% withdrawal rate, that's quite a bit of money. It's like $80,000, which is actually significantly more than what we live on now. It's actually double what we live on, but 2 million is just a nice round number. I feel like we get to a point where, there's enough money where we really wouldn't need to worry again. And it's not like I'm living some baller life, right? I'm driving a 20-year-old vehicle, which is, again, the reason why I have money is because I didn't spend it on a car, right? So
Yep.
For me, what matters most is time and the ability to spend it the way I want to. And so, a lot of people buy stuff with the money they have, but the best thing, in my opinion, that money can buy is freedom. And so that's what I'm using the money for.
Yeah, I'm in on that, man. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Use the money to buy your time back. 100%.
Exactly.
Buying a nice car is not going to get you anywhere with the freedom and the time stuff. So I agree.
Yeah.
On the book stuff though, about the margin and everything, how much capital are you usually putting into this business, like per month? And then how much do you sit on? Like your sell-through rate, I guess, is a better question there.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go with, last year I sold like 4,100 books, and the average buy cost of those books was like $17. So if I divide by 12, so it's about like $6,000 a month in inventory.
Wow.
So really, I mean, you guys know that that's not a lot of money, considering that if you do OA
like every 2
wholesale,
days.
you probably spend that in a day, right? One phone call or something, right? So it's really not that much. It's like an average of like 12, 13 books per day. So the thing is that these books that I'm buying have a high average selling price, right? I'm buying them on average for $17, on average flipping them for $68. And then the sell-through rate. So the way that I buy books might be a little bit different than I think a lot of businesses operate. And the reason why I say that is most businesses, when they have inventory, their goal is to sell the inventory as fast as possible and to get rid of all the inventory. Versus my approach to buying books is more of like an investment, where I think, okay, because a lot of times people go, Joji, you're buying books and so on average it takes about 4 months for my books to sell. And they're like, 4 months? That's forever. But I think about it in terms of an investment perspective. 4 months is actually a really, really short period of time. And my goal is always to, like Drew said, buy well below intrinsic value. So if I can buy a book that I know over the last decade, because it came out in 1991, and over the last decade it's sold anywhere from like $45 to $75, and I can pick up 4 or 5 copies for $15, I know long term that that's a book that's going to do well, and it might take time. But the thing is, the margin's so great that even if the turnover is a long time, that it's still well worth it for me. And my mindset is always sort of like long-term investment. So even though my average book takes 4 months to sell, in reality, to me, that's actually really quick. And there's even books that are still sitting in my inventory that have been there for over a year. And these are books that, for one reason or another haven't sold, but I still think there's a high likelihood that they should sell for what history has said that they should be selling for. And those are books that I'm happy to hold there and pay long-term storage fees because I know that the margin's still there. So I would say low turnover rate, about 0.5%. But the thing is, the margins are so high that, like I said, you can sell 297,000 and make about $100,000 profit. So
that's insane. And I think a lot of people too actually don't really know their turnover rate. Like for OA and stuff, like if something's tanking, most people are like trying to liquidate in 3 months, 90 days. So like you're an extra month and your margin is what, like 2-3 times their margin.
Yeah.
And you have like such a low expenditure every single month. Like I'm sure you have softwares and stuff, but for an OA business, like I can't even tell you how much software we have to use every month, or virtual assistants, or all that kind of stuff. So what does your business look like? Do you have to use software? Do you have VAs? Maybe what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, good question. So really the only software you would ever need to do book flipping is Keepa, because Keepa has inbuilt techniques for you to find books, Keepa deals, Keepa product finder, Keepa alerts. And I think that's about like $21, $22 per month. Now, everything else on top of that is just to make your workflow more efficiently. So I have BeCool, which is a repricing software. So I got SellerAmp, BeCool, and then I'm the owner of BookMind. So I don't pay for BookMind because I'm the co-owner of BookMind. So BookMind, I have SellerAmp as well, because SellerAmp has a very easy way to sort of track your inventory with like one click of the button. And then I have one sourcing VA to help me out, a VA that edits books. And I actually just brought on another VA for kind of just for some in-house just a general tracking stuff so I can track stuff a little bit better than I currently am. And that's about it. So, I mean, again, you could really only do it with Keepa if you wanted to, but eventually you will want to reprice, especially once you get probably above like 500 products, because then it becomes pretty sort of a lot of time and a lot of time investment to reprice those, because again, these are like individual products, right? It's not like wholesale or OA where you have like 50 of one unit, right? It's like you have 50 different units, so you have to go reprice each of them individually. So once you get to like 500 units, probably you're gonna want to reprice. Just again, I use Be Cool and then SellerApp. So I mean, really just those three. If you guys then want to expand to BookMind, obviously you can try BookMind, but you don't even need BookMind to start. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe you could just use Keepa and sell $100,000 in revenue just with that. So
why do you think more people don't do this?
Oh, go ahead.
Good question. I just think, I don't know, maybe just I think maybe it's too analytical for some people. Like you really have to have somebody who not only understands how to read the Keepa graph, but then also finds it enjoyable. And it's probably quite repetitive as well. And I think there's also kind of a stereotype around books that it's like, oh yeah, books is like the gateway drug in Amazon. Like this is what gets you to the other stuff. And I think there's just a lot of misconceptions about books. And again, there's not really anyone making content. Like, yeah, there's probably the most of the content is like scanning books with Scoutly or Scout IQ, but there's really only like me and Victor Gallegos who are actually like making content on like book arbitrage specifically. So yeah, I just think that there haven't been very many people on YouTube showing other people to do it. I'm a small YouTuber. I have almost 3,000 subscribers, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe YouTube algorithm doesn't like recommending to people. I don't know.
No, I mean, how long have you been doing it?
I've been doing
YouTube, not the
YouTube.
thing.
I've been doing it since like 2022, so about 2 years. Yeah, about 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah, I believe after hearing this one day, you're going to be the next 100,000. Everybody in the world is going to be selling books on Amazon, man. You're right, though. It is analytical. And what I've noticed trying to teach people the A to A stuff, like I think you have to put these Keepa charts in boxes in your head. So you have to have like, okay, goes in this box, this goes in this box. And if you don't have lots of like pattern recognition skills and lots of analytical thinking, you're like always going to struggle, and you're going to see stuff and think, well, this is good. And then it's like, well, it fell into that box that you messed up with over there. You got to like place them into little things. It sounds like that's how it works there too, right?
Yeah. You need analytical ability and a lot of pattern recognition, which I found, even having taught my own students, I'm a high school chemistry teacher, right? At least for the next few months, that a lot of stuff that might come easy to me doesn't actually come easy to a lot of people. And probably a lot of stuff comes easy to you, Drew, or you, John, probably doesn't come easy to a lot of people. So,
yep.
That's a good point.
Well, what else you got, John?
Yeah, so that's like super interesting. I think a lot too with books, a lot of people, like you said, I think they think I guess books is one of the things in Amazon, it looks like work. Because like you're lugging heavy boxes, like books are heavy. I think a lot of people think you need a warehouse, all that kind of stuff. OA is like, oh, you just sit at your computer and just, buy stuff all day. And it's like so cool. So I do agree. But then like, yeah, when it comes down to profits and all that other stuff, books is definitely way up there. And I think one of the things, I know a lot of booksellers probably listen to this because just the channel when I first started, it was all about books, is like they almost think they have to go the bulk route to really scale it. And what I like about when I started, I didn't really know book arbitrage. Like I kind of had eFlip for a little bit, but didn't really understand it. I was thrifting and I was like, I wanted to quit my job. So I was like, the quickest way for me to do that would just like to continue thrifting and kind of growing that way. And then kind of just, like working my way up. But with you kind of have like the best of both worlds because you're basically doing OA.
I am doing OA. That's exactly what I'm doing.
And you're sending everything to a prep center and your margins are crazy. You don't have any really overhead. Like when I had a warehouse, I had rent, I had employees, I had very expensive equipment, I had a forklift. Like it was insane, like all the stuff I had. And I probably didn't even have the margins you have. Like they're higher than OA. But when you run a bulk operation, you use a lot to labor. But with you, like you're kind of just cutting out the worst part of running a bulk business, all the labor and the equipment.
By the way, guys, if you want to listen to John's interview on my YouTube channel, he goes into bulk books and that's on my YouTube channel. So make sure you guys check that out as well. It's a great interview. Yeah, you mentioned, so I'm just doing online arbitrage. I'm doing the same thing that, Miles and Warner are doing. I'm just specifically doing it for books, and I have a prep center. So every book that I buy, just literally one click of the button goes to a prep center. Prep center sends it to the Amazon warehouse. It becomes live for sale on Amazon. The only real thing that you need to get good at is being able, like Drew said, to figure out the intrinsic value of a book, right?
Mm.
And that also goes back to why Keepa is so important, right? Because people who don't understand Keepa but came from the eBay world, which a lot of people do come from eBay world, I'm like, imagine if, like, when you get, I always ask them, like, when you go out to, let's say, a garage sale or a swap meet or a thrift store and you buy something, like, how do you figure out what you're going to sell that item for? And they go, oh, I just look at eBay sold comps. I was like, that's exactly what Keepa is, just like on absolute steroids, right? Because you can look not like 90 days in the past, you can look like a decade in the past, and you can see, how the used price and the new price is ebbed and flows. You can see it, like how often it was selling, and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, the cool thing is that I can just do it from my desk, and unlike thrift stores, Amazon is open 24/7. So like I mentioned, most of my buying is done between 10:30 p.m. and like midnight to 1 a.m. So I mean, it's hour and a half, 2 hours there, and I can find plenty of books doing that. And of course, at this point, I've seen probably hundreds of thousands of Keepa graphs that I've just kind of looked at over and over and over again. And going back to what Drew said, it's just pattern recognition. Like you have these little boxes in your hand, like, okay, that qualifies for this. Obviously, the overwhelming majority of books are not books that are going to be profitable, and so that falls in this greater category of, okay, this is a book that's overvalued or it's at market value. So over time, you get better at it, but it's just a repetition game, right? A lot of people are like, Joji, how can I get to you? I'm like, well, read a couple 100,000 more Keepa graphs and then you'll be there. But and it seems like a lot of work, but it's more of just consistent action. You don't actually need to read a couple 100,000 Keepa graphs to do this successfully, but you need to be able to be disciplined enough to do it every day and then learn from your mistakes. The great thing about books, even in OA books, is that the margins can be so high that you can make mistakes and still make profit. And not only that, you can even make bad buys and still sometimes get away with it because of the way that the dynamics of the prime bump and the prime gap, where you could have, let's say, bought a book at market value, and I'm like, why did you buy this book at market value? But you could still have sold it for the prime bump and still made money, even though technically that's, not really buying the book undervalued. It's kind of just the dynamic of the way the buy box works. But anyways, there's a lot of pros to it. And so that's why I have the YouTube channel, to help people change their lives, because it's changed my life, no doubt.
Yeah, what I think people really need to understand on this stuff too, especially we've been having people on that run like higher margin businesses,
Right.
and like from doing a low margin business and then doing some high margin stuff, it's like so much better running a high margin business, like for your peace of mind, for your bank account, for like everything. I think that people don't talk about enough how 8% margin business is very hard to run. Like very difficult. You have to have a team. And I don't know why. I was just telling somebody this recently. When you're at like your margin of 30%, you probably worry less about the margin and worry more about the revenue. Because if you can increase your revenue, you're going to make a lot more money. But when you're in the OA game and your margin's 6 to 8% or something like that, now you don't really need to worry about the revenue. You need to worry about the margin. Like, how am I going to get that to 12? And to me, that is extremely boring and annoying. So that's the main reason I left it. Because I'm like, how am I going to get from 8% to 12? I'd rather get from like 300K to 600K, because you can do it like that. But what happens is if your margin is bad, it's just going to go down. You're not going to have you're not going to just do more revenue and somehow you're going to make more money, like margin wise. It's just going to get more problems, more holes, which I don't think people talk about enough. But
I'm so glad you say that. So glad you say that, because everyone sees the orange bars and they see, wow, 1 million, 1.5 million. I'm like, wholesale, it's probably not that much money, honestly, because of the margins. And that's very normal, like 6 to 8% margins, like even for like a normal operating business, like that's normal. And what's funny is, Victor and I created BookMind, and a lot of people who come from the book world in online book arbitrage, like they're looking at books on BookMind. It's like, oh, this is a book that you could probably get 50 or 60%. People like turn that down. They're like, nah, 50% on this book, that's that's not, I'm shooting for a higher, that's garbage. I'm looking for 100% or higher on like each individual book flip. And it's just funny because Victor, he's actually ran some real businesses. Like he's actually owned some actual brick and mortar like yogurt stores, right? He's like people like, they just don't understand what the normal margin of a real business is. And then also like if you compare it to OA and wholesale, but yeah, people on BookMind are sitting there like turn down 50%. We're just like, oh, I mean, I understand it because there's books that you can get way more higher margin on, but it's just funny that there's such a large difference, right, between like traditional OA versus just book OA.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the thing that just, man, I guess people don't
Yeah.
understand like the 6 to 8% is not abnormal either. That's like
It's
normal.
not. It's
Yeah.
normal. Like
Yeah.
if you doing like 8%, like that's good. Like if
Yeah.
you're a brick and mortar store, you're doing 8%, that's good. Like you're doing a good job. So
Yeah.
Well,
And,
that's the
and
other
like I
thing
said,
too.
oh, go ahead.
Good. Oh, I was gonna
Like I
say
said, the
that.
only way go ahead. You got it. I'm not talking.
No, I was gonna say a lot of people think they're doing like 10 to 15% or whatever, but once you get an accountant and they really
yeah,
go through your books, you're looking
yeah,
at 6 to 8. So if you think you're running like a 10% and you don't have an accountant, you're probably like closer to 6.
yeah,
100% guarantee that.
yeah,
Which is such a small amount of money, man. I mean, think
yeah,
about spending $1 million worth of shit on the internet and you getting 60 grand. That
yeah,
is like, that is such a crazy thing. And I think I mean, I don't know. At that point, you're not in the business of like OA. You're in the organizational business. Like
yeah,
you have to organize that bottom line or you're going to really get in trouble there. So
yeah.
I like this idea. If I go back to Amazon, I'll hit you up for sure.
Yeah,
I'll
please
be
do,
like,
Drew.
teach me this
Yeah.
book stuff, man. But I think honestly, I think I could look through the book stuff and probably know because what you're saying, like I already know that kind of thing. I never heard of it though. It's the first time
Yeah.
hearing of it. But it's
Yeah.
just A to A, except for a higher margin, really less room for
Yeah.
error. It seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, feel free to check out the YouTube channel, and you're a smart guy, so you'll get it, and you can even just not that you have to buy any books, but you can play around with it, and I think you'll see pretty quickly. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for sure.
So one big thing about the book, I was going to ask this earlier. Are you buying like one at a time on these things? So that's like kind of suppressing competition if you have like 1 to 3, or is there like 80 that come in stock and you're trying to figure that out?
No, most of the books that I'm buying are more long tail books. They're books that might only sell like once a month or twice a month, or maybe even uh, 10 times in the last 6 months. So they're books that don't really sell often, but they're a lot of them are like rare books. They're books that came out in let's say 1990. It's a book that had a low print run. It's a book that for whatever reason just historically has held a lot of value. And so obviously you would make a decision based upon kind of how often it sells, to determine like how many copies you'd buy. But a lot of the books that I'm buying are books that are ranked 1 million, 2 million, or even up to 3 million sales rank, which is funny going back to John, right? Because when people are scanning books at Scoutly and Scout IQ, like sometimes the advice that there's like anything under 1 million, just reject it. Like don't even look at it. But the reality is that there are a lot of books out there that sell infrequently for a lot of money, and those are sort of the books that I like to hone in on. Now, going back to what's the strategy in terms of buying books, well, the best data is always your own data. So right now, a lot of the buying I'm doing is just replens. They're just books that I've sold in the past that I'm now going to buy again at that same target price and buy and sell again, because I've identified, okay, I definitely bought this book when it was below its true market value. Usually it happens 1 to 2 times every couple of years. And so if I can track this book on a spreadsheet, then I could be, okay, this is a book I could buy again and just buy it again and again and again in the future.
Are you able to replenish a lot of books, or
Yeah.
just some of them you are?
Yeah, quite a few books. Because I've been doing this for years now. So often if you are truly buying a book that's undervalued, it's usually a book that doesn't get to like this purchase price that you just bought it at very often. But it depends on the book. Sometimes you'll have a book that usually gets to this price 2 or 3 times during the year. Sometimes it might be every other year. But yeah, there are plenty of books out there that if you track with Keepa alerts, you can track up to 5,000 products, which is a lot of products to track in the beginning. Yeah, you can get notifications basically every day. And so you can set certain buy prices based upon books you've actually already sold for a profit. And you can get notified basically every day, and you can, decide if it still makes sense to go pick up those books. But yeah, but a lot of the books I buy, probably at least half the books I buy on a day-to-day basis are replens.
Interesting.
Nice. So about this software, when did you come out with that?
Yeah, so Victor and I, we launched this in February, and it's called BookMind. And what we wanted to do is actually leverage historical data to make decisions about books that are on Amazon right now. So all the other softwares, they look at live data to make decisions. Same thing with like Scout IQ and Scally, they look at live data to make decisions about books, when in reality you should be using historical data to be making decisions about books. So that's just a better way, because you have a better indication of what the book is actually worth. Because at any given time, a book could be extremely overinflated in value, or it could be extremely, well below market value, or likely somewhere in between those two values. So we came out with a software that essentially looks at all 95 million books in Amazon, and then brings it down to about 300,000 books that actually hold value above like $45. and sell a decent amount of time. So I can't say exactly how much, but they actually sell and have like historical price of 45 or more. And then with those 300,000 books, we're just looking on an hourly basis for these books to drop below like a certain percentage of what their historical average is. And then we use other really important metrics for you to make decisions about whether or not this is a book you buy. For example, we really pay a lot of attention to offer count. So as you guys know, offer count basically references like the amount of supply or the number of sellers on the listing. So imagine, let's say you have a book that normally sells for 45 bucks, right now it's 15. Well, like, okay, that book is definitely undervalued. But if the offer count is, 4x what it used to be, that's probably why the book's $15, right? It's because there's 4 times as many people selling the book as there was in the past. But essentially what we're trying to do is look at, these 300,000 books and bring it down to books that, have a lot of important metrics going for it that predict that the book could be profitable. So we give it a BookMind score out of 10. And the closer that value is to 10, the more positive indicators that book has for being profitable. So for example, getting a book at a 10, a BookMind score of 10 would be a book that has a very high average intrinsic value. Like let's say the book always selling between 65 and 80 bucks. And right now it's 15 bucks. So that would positively weigh that book very high because it's extremely below its intrinsic value. But then let's also think that its current supply relative to the last 180 days is significantly lower. Like let's say the average supply of the last 180 days is like 15 sellers and now it's 4. So you have a book that's extremely undervalued, that has way fewer sellers on it. But then let's say we also look at how often it's sold in the last 30 or 60 days. Like we look at the number of sales rank drops, and then we compare it to the number of offers on the listing. We could also predict like how likely is it that this book will also sell out because of the fact that it's sold way more times than how many people are on the listing. So it's like you have a book that's extremely undervalued. You have a book that has a very low offer count relative to its past historical data. Not only that, its likelihood of selling out is very low. Let's say Amazon used to sell this book and they just went out of stock on the book, and it's also its lowest price ever. Like all those metrics come together to give it a score. And so the idea is that the higher the score, the more likely we think that book is profitable. So this is a long way to go around saying we're trying to find books that are not only below the market value, but are also books that have other indicators of being profitable.
Yeah, and if you don't mind saying, which you don't have to say this, how much did it cost to build this software?
So Victor is actually the coder. So Victor built himself. So
sweet.
Just his time. Yeah, so just his time, which is pretty insane. And then for the API is actually pretty expensive. So I can't necessarily say how much, but it's pretty expensive, the API, because we update every hour, right? The idea is that we're looking at books on an hourly basis, and that's actually quite expensive to do that. But it was great that Victor knows how to code. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that saves a lot. I'm pretty sure those projects can get pretty hefty when you're paying a team of devs and stuff.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, I hear that. I think somebody, I don't know where I'd heard that. Keepa, they make all their money from that stuff, right? Softwares
they
get
so much money. Yeah,
that's why they just charge us $22, and they charge like the software's loads of money, right?
A lot of money, but it's well worth it. So
yeah. Well, how much does it cost? How much, like, if I wanted to buy it?
If you want to, so our lowest tier is $129, and that's just That's just access to the software 24/7. So about like $4.33 per day. And then we have 2 other tiers. The middle tier has twice monthly meetings, mentorship with Victor and I. So like you'll meet with us and you meet with all the other. So we have basically Gold Panner is the lowest tier, and then Gold Prospector is the middle tier, and then Gold Miner is the highest tier. And the highest tier is like a one-on-one as well with Victor or I. So there's like 3 different tiers.
Gold. That's great.
That's very
Smart.
good. Very smart.
Yeah,
especially the day. It's only $4.32 a day. I love
it is. Like you can literally go on to BookMind right now and just look at the first page, and you're gonna find a book that's gonna make more than $4. I'm just like, I understand that not everyone's there, and that is a lot of money, but at the same time, we don't want to undersell the software. Like software is pretty insane. So, there are people
what do you have to find? Like 20 bucks, probably $25.
I'd say my
not.
recommendation is if you can't buy at least 10 books a day, I probably wouldn't recommend it because, $130 a month is, it's not a little amount of money. Like it's a commitment to what you're doing. Like you're focusing on book OA. You shouldn't be going thrifting and, doing traditional OA and trying doing all these things. Like you're focusing on books. But, if you spend 20 minutes a day on BookMind, you're going to definitely make it worth it for sure. But that also, granted, you also have to understand how to read a Keepa graph. I'm like, what we're doing is essentially not giving you books to buy, but we're giving you a leads list of around like 3,000 books updated on an hourly basis. And you still have to go in and you still have to do the purchases and figure out, okay, which of these books I want to buy. But like the other sort of book sourcing softwares are like, okay, well, here's all the books in Amazon. You pull these different levers and then you try to search from there. We're like, no, there's no reason to do that. Like 99.99% of books in Amazon are worthless, that are not undervalued. Like, don't even look at them. Just basically what we're saying is we're taking you out on a boat into the ocean where we know there's a bunch of fish. So just throw your line in there and you're going to catch fish if you know how to like rig a pole, right? So that's the goal, is that we're just trying to get you to the place where there are actually great books, and then you make the decisions from there.
Nice.
What's your goal with all the software? Do you have like a big goal with it? Because I'm sure I know those things, the exits on those things are awesome. So
right now, Victor and I are just really enjoying what we're doing. So I don't know if you guys know this, but Victor, I want to say he's 39, but he actually retired 2 years ago from his job. So he also fired, and he fired at a similar net worth as well. So he left his job and he's like, Joji, if I know we could have done this earlier, like I would have retired earlier. But we just are really enjoying this, and we have a great partnership together, and we just love helping people. Like, I'm an educator at heart, so I love teaching people. And at this point, with my wife and I getting close to our fire number, it's just about creating impact and helping people, because there's enough. Like there's a time where you have enough money, right? And at some point, it's like, I don't need any more money to be satisfied. Like what I ultimately wanted was to choose to do with my time what I want to do with my time, and that's what I'm doing now. Like I'm literally leaving teaching at this end of this year, so I can focus on BookMind and also Amazon, which is what I really want to do. Teaching people on YouTube, buying books on Amazon and BookMind, like that's me controlling my time. And yeah, I mean that was the goal at the end. So now it's just about making impact, and that's the goal.
Sweet.
Got anything closing, John?
That's awesome. Where can they find you? Do you have any parting words? What do you got for your closing?
Yeah, what do I got? Parting words. Give online book arbitrage a shot. You don't have to pay $130 for BookMind to get started. You can just use a Keepa subscription only, which costs about $20 a month. I've got tons of free content. I honestly believe you could go to my YouTube channel and sell 6 figures just with the free content. Once you get, like I said, once you understand how to read a Keepa graph, you'll understand how insane BookMind is, but most of you are not going to be there yet, which is fine. That's why we made all the free content, right? All the content that I wouldn't necessarily feel bad about charging for is there for free, so that you can get to the point where then you would come and use BookMind. But I guess my parting words is, just ultimately find something that's for you. It doesn't have to be books. It doesn't have to be OA. Like just find something that you enjoy doing, that you can give 100% of your attention to, and go from there. And then my last other parting words is, Drew, let's set up a call so we can get you started to buy some books.
Hey, I'm not too far. Like, I mean, I didn't understand it was like this. So you might end up convincing me, because I think that I might even get this software just to see, like, if you're saying like I know how to read the Keepa charts like really well. I'd be interested just to be like, can I find profitable stuff knowing nothing about this except for Keepa charts? And then if that's the case, then you might have a lifelong customer, man. I might just just do that on my free time.
Yeah, we have a free 10-day trial, so no hard feelings. Just do a free 10-day trial and then cancel it. And if you need another free 10 days, just do it again, cancel. Well, that's all good.
I just keep canceling. I'm going to pay, man. I'm not going to be one of those guys. My goodness.
Yeah, but anyone can trial for free for 10 days. And like, if you understand how to read Keepa graphs, you'll realize the power of it. And like I said, the tricky part of software is that you have some people, like you have a set price for what people pay, but you have some people who like abuse the heck out of it because they see the value and they just get so much more value than what they pay. But then you get some people who are like, oh, I don't know, like it's not worth, like, it's obviously like a spectrum with where people are at, but there's some people like, before we actually launched the software to be paid, we let it just sit out there on the internet for like a month for free. And then we were getting a bunch of people like, oh, I bought 500 books in the first week. And we're just like, oh my God. But I mean, those are the people that are really taking advantage of the software, right? So, yeah. I'm excited.
One final thing before we go.
Yeah.
Your biggest thing with not scaling it even higher and higher, maybe you're still trying to do this, is it your time or is it the capital? Which is the constraint on buying more books or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely not capital because we definitely have the money to invest it if we wanted to. I really believe that diversifying your investments is smart. And, I don't really want to have a large percentage of my net worth necessarily in Amazon. The goal is always to use Amazon as a vehicle to get to financial independence. So the goal is not to just have 100% of my net worth in Amazon, because at any time
Come
Amazon,
on, man, why not?
Yeah.
because at any time
Roll the
Amazon can shut
dice,
you down.
man.
I'd rather, I'd rather have like 5% or less of my net worth in Amazon, because then if Amazon, were to shut down, or if Amazon cancels my account, it's like no big deal. It's like, okay, yeah, that sucks, but it's not a huge deal. So for me, it's been more like, do I really want to bring on a team of 10 virtual assistants? Because I could do that and I could manage it, but then again, is it fun, right? Going back to what you're saying, Drew, about like, obviously the margins are better in a way, but as you scale, just because you're scaling and you're selling more in revenue doesn't mean that you're making more money. It just means that you're bringing on more responsibility and you have more systems to screw up, right? So that could end up costing you money, right? So for me, it's like sitting back and like, what's enough? Like, am I happy selling 300,000 a year, making 100,000 profit? Yeah, I'm like, that's cool. Like, I'm happy doing that. I don't have to grind like super hard to do that. It's fun. Plus, at this point, I'm now focused on building out impact with BookMind and building out impact with the YouTube channel. So again, it gets to a point where it's like enough is enough. So, do I have goals to go to 400,000, 500? Not really. I mean, I kind of just like the pace I'm going at, and it's wildly profitable, and I could always show you the bank accounts if you want to, or the.
I believe you. I believe you.
Yeah, I can show you the bank account, or I can show you the investor portfolio. Like, I'm happy to do that, right? So it's kind of like I've got to a point where I just got this peace of mind, especially now leaving my job in the next couple of months. I'm just like, wow, this is what we've been working for, and now like we're about to accomplish it. And again, it's not like I'm gonna sit on the beach and do nothing in my life. It's like now I get to choose to spend my time the way I want to spend it, regardless of if it makes money or not, because it doesn't matter anymore. So
ironically, you'll probably end up making more money anyways.
Yeah,
huh?
I know. Ironically, probably
sure.
right. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I bet you will double that 2 million like quicker than it took you to get to the 2, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Just because I think that's how it works. You focus on your passion stuff, and if you're in a monetizable lane, I mean, you're just gonna win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
This has been fun, guys.
Where could everyone find you, or where do you want them to go?
Yeah, you guys can find me on my YouTube channel, Joji Davenport. My name is Joji. Joji Davenport. And then we also have a BookMind YouTube channel that's also growing really fast. It's got over 300 subscribers now, which is awesome. And lastly, if you're interested in books, we are John will be there. So we have a conference coming out in September, September 13th to 15th. So me, Victor Gallegos, Avery Romer, and Steve Rakin are throwing a book selling. So it's gonna be Books and Beyond book selling conference in Las Vegas. So if you guys want to hang out, that'd be awesome. I can show Drew in person how to do it there, and John's gonna be there anyway.
Come, Drew.
Yeah,
I'll consider it.
Yeah.
I'll be speaking. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
It's gonna be awesome. So we sent out a tester feeler to see if anyone's interested, and then we got like 180 something people like pretty quickly that just gave us their name and email address. So obviously not all those people are probably gonna come, but I think there's a need for a book selling conference, especially since Caleb Roth left, after exiting Scott AQ and left to turn the page events on. So anyways, I'm excited about this.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here, guys. If you guys definitely go follow Joji. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. And the next episode is going to be super special because it's number 20. So be on the lookout for what we're doing for that. We'll announce on socials.
Yeah, look at the Instagram. That's going to be sweet.
Yeah, it'll be all over Instagram. Later, guys. Thanks, Joji.
See you guys. Peace out.
Peace.